Hey everybody, Matt Johnston here, and we're back and still talking about COVID-19 and recent government actions, including a vaccine mandate. Now, before we get started, I'd appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button. You see that down below. And if you want to get notifications when we post new content, click that little bell and you will get those. For all those of you who have subscribed so far to the channel, thank you so much, and please share these videos around. I would greatly appreciate it. So on September 10th, President Biden issued or discussed a government-wide effort on combating COVID-19 infections, and it included executive orders regarding federal contractors, regarding vaccination mandates for those contractors and for federal employees, although there are exemptions, which is a little odd, but we won't go there. But there was probably the most unprecedented action that came out of the president's proposals and directives is a vaccine mandate that would apply to all employers, private and public, in the United States with more than 100 employees or with 100 or more employees. Now, it's not a true mandate in the fact that somebody who refuses to get a vaccine must supply a negative PCR test every week in order for these companies to be able to comply. There's obviously going to have to be some sort of reporting mechanism because the failure to implement the mandate can cost $14,000 or so every day there's a violation. So it is going to have some teeth. Now, the actual regulation hasn't been published as of this recording. And I'm recording on September the 14th, just so as you know. But sometime within the next couple of weeks, I would imagine OSHA will release the regulation on an emergency basis, so it won't go through the normal notice and comment period, and it will probably be immediately effective. And employers are going to have to require employees to get vaccinated or provide a weekly negative PCR test. Now, this is an unprecedented step, at least to my knowledge, on the federal level. I'm also not aware of any state level activity of a similar nature. So this action will be the subject of a number of lawsuits just in the 5 days since it's been noticed. Several states have announced that they are likely to file suit, and several private employers have already announced that they are going to file suit as well, and it will be interesting. So the question is how can OSHA do this? And it's premised upon their notion of what is called the general duty to protect workers. So I've spoken about this general duty in the past on a number of occasions. And essentially the general duty is such that an employer has a general duty, an obligation to protect its workers from known hazards. So, for example, if you work in a chemical plant, you have to have rules and regulations regarding personal protective equipment. You have to provide that personal protective equipment, and you have to go through safety training and all this other stuff in order to ensure that the employees are safe, or as safe as possible. So that's the generalized foundation that OSHA is going to be operating under, that COVID-19 is a known hazard and that a vaccine is assumed and is believed and probably is much safer and provides a level of protection. The interesting thing is whether or not the government can actually mandate this for private employers who are not federal contractors. So it's an interesting question. It'll be an interesting legal question. So what does this mean? Well, if you happen to have 100 or more employees on your books, then you have to comply. Or you face fines and penalties. You can, of course, join or file one of the many lawsuits that are going to be filed. The other tactic that you can take is just simply pay the fines and leave it be. If you happen to have 99 or fewer employees, technically this mandate does not apply to you. So it will become something of a question of, if not a question of if, but when it will start creeping down in terms of number of employees that would be captured by this. The vast majority of Americans work for organizations that are small businesses. Small businesses, as defined by the SBA, is anybody with fewer than 500 employees. And in fact, most small businesses have fewer than 20 employees. So the question is going to be when, if ever, it's going to creep its way down. Unless the regulation is stopped by court action, I feel, and I think I'm on pretty solid ground, that at some point in the future, that 100 number is going to become 70, 50, 30, something along those lines. And so the number will start creeping down to a certain extent. That's just a function of how I see the direction of this regulation. I don't have any hard, solid data on that. That's just I guess, a cynic's view of how government regulation works. And I apologize if you think that's a little too cynical, but that's what I believe is likely to happen. So the question then remains is, can employers require vaccinations? And I've answered this question many, many times in the past, and the answer is yes, you can. However, and this is a big fat honking caveat, you should have a plan for what you're going to do when employees refuse. And there will be some employees that are going to refuse. It is a natural sort of thing. There's already exemptions for sincerely held religious beliefs and for medical conditions. Other people may be refusing for personal reasons. And you have to have a plan for addressing those kinds of things. So before you start requiring a mandate, have a plan for addressing when somebody says no. If you want to work with us and figure out what that plan looks like, or if you want to ask questions about having a vaccine mandate in your workspace, or if you want to start getting on our calendar to discuss the regulations when they are actually published, please click the link that you're going to see down below and we will schedule some time. In the meantime, go out and watch some live soccer. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.